I'm Ekaterina, and I'm very happy to present and to do a workshop about the growth loops for you today. First, as always, a couple of words about myself before we dive in. I'm Ekaterina. I've been working for more than a decade in growth and marketing, and I started my journey and worked many years as an individual contributor across different parts of the funnel and areas. And in recent years, I've been taking leadership work and also, apart from this, some consulting and mentoring startups on growth. Currently, I work at the company called Mimo, and I work there as a head of marketing. Been also leading the growth team there as well. I guess in recent years, I spent quite some time working on different growth loops, trying to make it work, trying to break through the dependency on paid user acquisition. And today I want to share some learnings with you. A couple of words about the company I work at the moment. So Mimo is an app that is teaching everyone how to code, and it's already helped more than 25 million people to get confidence that they can code too, and that coding is not only for math wizards. Starting 2022, we also have a web platform which also helps beginners to get to job readiness and actually get a career in tech. And now, what's on the agenda for today? I'll talk about the three most common growth loops based on paid user acquisition, content, and virality. And for each of the loops, I'll try to stick to the same format, talking about how it works, what it looks like, some examples, and then also how to optimize it and which mistakes to avoid. First, a question. Raise your hand if you have heard of growth loops before. Ooh. A decent half. Nice, a really hot topic. I think the reason why I wanted to talk about it today is because a lot of the information on the internet in the courses like Reforge focuses on the growth loops for web products, but not so much for mobile. And you all know these canonical examples of how Dropbox grew through a growth loop, or how Airbnb is growing. But I think it's not that applicable to mobile apps, and that's why I wanted to dig a bit deeper into the specifics of the loops for mobile apps. For those of you who have not heard about it yet, growth loops methodology appeared a couple of years ago in contrast to the very traditional pirate framework, or also so-called AAARRR or R funnel. The main difference between those is that in order to get more output if you're sticking to the pirate framework, you need to invest more on top. The growth loops are designed in a way that you can reinvest the output that you are getting, the input that you are getting, and get more output this way. So this leads to compounding growth instead. Some other advantages of growth loops and why you should consider it. So first of all, if you're lucky, you can implement it once, and if it works for you, it will just keep scaling together with your user base. So you need to maintain it to keep it bugs-free, but overall, it's fairly easy. It can be fairly easy to implement and can lead to compounding growth with way less effort. The loops are more defensible because the whole model that is based on different micro loops is quite hard to copy for your competition and hugely depends on the product you're having. It also fosters cross-functional collaboration. I think some of you might know the situation when the paid user acquisition or marketing team is finger pointing at the product team because the conversion is very low, or the product team finger pointing at marketing because they believe they brought low quality traffic. So to avoid this, you create cross-functional collaboration where all the teams are aligned around the same output and they work together. So let's start with the paid user acquisition loop. This is the one that is fairly common, and I believe also some of you might be using it already. Very straightforward. You invest into paid advertising, user installs the app, and then some portion of users purchase the subscription, and you can reinvest this money into your marketing activities. So which of you already are using this? Also almost half. So almost everybody who knows about growth loops is using paid user acquisition loop. Nice. However, on mobile, there is a twist. And also, a lot of you might have noticed already that there is a so-called organic uplift. So this is the reason why you cannot just usually stop paid user acquisition, especially if it's a decent half of your acquisition mix, or at least like 30 to 35%. Because in this case, the velocity of the downloads and of ratings and reviews is going to decrease, which will send a negative signal to the store algorithms, and this way your organics might drop as well. So on mobile, this is one of the specifics exactly that you should, of course, keep in mind and be careful with when projecting your investment. Today at the conference, I believe there will be dozens of talks and hundreds of different tactics of how you can improve the paid user acquisition loop and maybe organics as well. That's why I did not want to cover all this multitude of tactics that you can use. What I wanted to cover in the first part is how you can strategically approach optimizing your paid acquisition loop. And the first step to do so is to actually turn the loop into a funnel. I'm not a big fan of saying that funnels are lame, it's old-fashioned, it's like 10 to 20 years old. I think that funnels are still incredibly useful, and when you layer it on top of your loop, it can give you a lot of insights and actually help you fix the bottlenecks. So first, on the slide, you see an example of how the funnel typically looks like for the paid user acquisition. It starts with ad impression, ends with renewals or purchases, depending on what monetization model you're using. And there are multiple steps of where users can drop off in between. This is what I recommend you do as a first step. Make sure you have a funnel like this and you track the metrics on a regular basis, at least on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, to start getting an idea where your bottlenecks for the funnel already might be. And the most typical KPIs that you want to optimize for are customer acquisition cost, lifetime value. Also, these days, a lot of companies or apps are switching to payback period to make sure it's faster and you can reinvest into growth faster. In my experience, it makes sense to focus on both. Of course, you can make a lot of improvements at the top of the funnel, but it also makes a lot of sense and really pays off if you work together with your product team to simultaneously be making improvements to conversion to purchase rates and improving the lifetime values. Also, don't completely ignore blended customer acquisition cost. It's not maybe the most reliable metric for your success, but if you're investing effort into organic user acquisition and app store optimization, you also want to know if these efforts actually pay off. So monitor it closely as well. And then let's say, just like me, you want to focus on decreasing your customer acquisition cost. The story does not end here. Customer acquisition cost, as we have seen, is a complex metric with a lot of teams having various degree of impact on it. So what you should do next is to try to build a hierarchy of metrics to get to the actual constituents and the parts of the metric that you can really impact. I highlighted them in green here. So yeah, try to get to the bottom of it. You control the spend. You to some extent control the CPMs. You can pick different targeting audiences. You can participate in different auctions. You control CTR with optimizing your creatives. You less control your product team, more controls the conversion to trial opt-in rate and then the conversion to purchase. But make sure you have a very good idea of what metrics are parts of it and which of them might be levers for you. And as a fourth step, this might be the most difficult one, requires good soft skills and a lot of communication. Try to build the roadmaps in a way that they're aligned per this step of the funnel or the metric that you're actually trying to improve. I built one in Excel. It's not a real roadmap. It's just a very basic example of what it can look like. And it probably should not be in Excel. I recommend Linear, Trello, or Notion for this purpose, or another task management tool you might be using. But make this roadmaps transparent. Make sure that simultaneously several teams might be working towards the same objective and working on improving a certain metric. Because as you can see in the example, there are multiple levers across different teams that can be used. Mistakes to avoid. I'm going to cover two, the most classic ones in my experience. The first one, starting with solutions. Again, here today, you're probably going to hear about hundreds of things you can potentially do to improve your user acquisition and growth. But try to not jump on all of them randomly or right away. I like the framework that is often used for product discovery. It's called opportunity solution trees. This is where you start with your desired outcome. Then you layer on different opportunities that you usually get from user insights. So maybe insights into your competition, maybe some insights into the vertical, but usually the pain points from the users come first. Then you only get to the solutions and to the exact experiments that you can run to improve your target metric. Here I used trial opt-in rate as an example. Let's say you heard from user interviews that the difference between your pro version and the free version is not very clear, especially early on in onboarding, and you want to improve that. So what you can do is to maybe design a paywall and test a paywall where you will show a comparison table between free and the pro version. Maybe you can improve your onboarding emails to explain the difference a bit better. But most importantly, just start with the target metric, because the solutions to the problem might be multiple. And then it will be up to you to estimate which one has the most potential. And yeah, the second mistake, which I also briefly covered already, when planning your budgets, when planning your growth with paid user acquisition, make sure to not forget about the organic coefficient and the viral coefficients, because when scaling down, it might also go down unexpectedly otherwise. Now, let's move on to the viral loops. Viral loops also look fairly straightforward. User installs the app, then they want to share your app, and they do. It's like the very ideal, perfect flow. The viral loops have a lot of advantages. They're very, fairly easy to implement, and they're also free. And so this is a great way to decrease your blended customer acquisition cost if your product is a good fit for it. They also lead to compounding growth, and they also help you to get some brand exposure. Now, question, who is already using viral loops? A few, and not so many. Then it's good. Then hopefully it will be inspiring for you to try it out. The first type, non-incentivized viral loops or word of mouth. Quite hard to engineer because it happens through natural users, and usually you want users to experience value first and delight, and to naturally want to share your app. I don't think this happens too often, but of course there are products that are growing successfully through it. The maybe most famous example would be Duolingo. And you can see here how apps like Fabulous, Meditopia, Bunch work non-incentivized referral scheme to grow. They are not offering any incentives for you for inviting friends, but I assume it works for them because it's still there. The second type, which I think is way more popular for mobile apps, is the incentivized viral loops. It works exactly like this, like the non-incentivized one, except you're offering something, some reward for users when they invite your friends. At every step of this loop, there are different variables that you can optimize. You can use different channels through which you communicate your offer. You can show the referral scheme pop up at different times. Channels through which it can be shared can also vary. So there are lots of things to experiment with. And as a first step, I still recommend to also turn this loop into funnel as well. Surprise. Try to layer out the steps of the funnel and the potential conversion rates that you expect to see at every step to at least get an idea if it has any potential for you, if it can really make an impact. But let's talk about the exact levers that you can use to improve your viral loop. First one, copy and design. You see 4 completely different examples of how your referral offer might look like and sound like. 4 apps using completely different. My personal favorite is Headspace because they're wrapping the copy around gifting like 30 days to your friend. I think that's a very powerful message to stick to. But yeah, this is something you can definitely a lot experiment with. Another thing you can test is incentives. Typically, they're split into 2 types, one-sided or double-sided. One-sided is when you reward just the person who invites another person. Double-sided is when both parties get rewarded. And the types of incentives can also vary hugely. You can use discount, you can offer money for inviting a friend, you can offer a free pro of different durations, app currency, access to features, levels, badges, merch. You can do a bunch of stuff. The most important thing here is to make sure that it's aligned with your user's goal and use case. For example, a user who is playing Candy Crush probably wants to have fun, so rewarding them with an access to some hidden next level might make sense. While a person who is using Uber wants to get from point A to point B, so and probably as cheap as possible, so rewarding them with some monetary incentive or a discount might make sense for Uber. When I experimented with different types of incentives at Mimo, we, for example, saw quite an increase in the invite accepted rate when we switched to double-sided incentives. And when we started offering 14 days of Pro versus 7 days of Pro, it was not a very clear A/B test because we changed 2 variables. But still, I believe that it was mostly the making the incentive double-sided, which helped us to boost the invite accepted rate. And another thing is to make sure that you offer different incentives for different segments of your users, starting with at least free and already paying customers. Because paying customers are not going to benefit from 30 days of your Pro version because they already have all these benefits. So try to offer them something else. And most importantly, think, how does inviting a friend for a paying customer is going to improve their experience? In our case, friends get connected and you can monitor what your friends are doing, how long they're practicing, what kind of playgrounds and projects they're building in the product. That's why we are wrapping it around learning together with friends and getting inspiration from them. So this might be something for you to consider as well. The third lever, timing. You can be very in the face when it comes to your referral offer. A lot of apps do this as well. At least I've seen Meditopia and Endel doing so. Also, you can show your referral offer after users experience some value. This is what we are doing at Mimo. Or you can be like Lingo Kids that is showing the referral scheme pop-up in order for users to experience value. Or you can place this thing all over the place. What Lingo Kids is doing is they're showing the referral scheme offer when the user closes the paywall in non-onboarding, because they might be not ready to pay yet, but maybe they're ready to refer friends and want to get access to the Pro version to give it a shot. So this might work pretty good. The fourth lever, the touch points and recurrence. I definitely recommend to not show the referral offer just once, but rather throughout the user journey and at least multiple times after a couple of days at the beginning of usage. And you can use also different channels to communicate it. You can have a pop-up or a little drawer, a banner in the app to show it. You can communicate it through the email. You can also always have it in the profile in the settings for users to discover when they're feeling ready, they will share it. And the last lever I want to cover is the actual flow and the layout of the offer. A lot of apps are using native models. Some are offering all the possible options there are, like Spotify or Fabulous. Some apps are sticking to the several very popular sharing options and add an option to also copy the link or check some others. When we tested native models versus showcasing just the two most popular ones, we saw an increase to invite rate of 8 and 14%. WhatsApp and SMS back then were the most popular channels through which the content was shared anyways. So I thought it might be a good idea to actually help users avoid the paradox of choice and to try that and to just give them these two options with an option to also copy a link on top of it. So it might be worth trying as well. Mistakes to avoid. The first one, make sure that this loop is actually a good fit for your product and that it's worth investing effort into, because you can get into the optimization rut and you can keep improving different parts of the funnel and experiment with all these 5 levers that I have mentioned before. But the problem is that if your app is really niche, if users are not going to naturally share it, and if they have probably not that many friends that want to have the same app or use the same product anyways, it's unlikely to be a significant driver for your growth, even if you double or triple the K factor. I had a team lead who used to say that an increase of 100% from 0 is still 0. So make sure you do not end up in this situation where you might be putting the work in, but in the end, it might not be a decisive factor for your growth. How do you actually decide if it has any potential at all? Easy, build a model, do a bit of math. This is also a very simple example of how it can look like in an Excel spreadsheet. List the steps that take the users to invite others. Map some metrics for every step of the funnel that are needed, and build maybe realistic, optimistic, and pessimistic scenarios of how the math can look like in the end, and what numbers you ideally need to make it a somewhat significant contributor to your growth. Second thing, monitor the relationship between invite accepted and monetization rates. If you are sticking to double-sided incentives because you want to increase your invite accepted rate, it might work, but make sure that it's not going to hinder your monetization, even if it's a good driver of user acquisition. Because, of course, if you give 14 days of pro to everybody who gets invited, these are the users, or at least a portion of them, is not going to start the free trial, and they're probably not going to convert within the first days. So monitor the relationships between the two. We barely have any, so for us it's fine, but make sure you're not cannibalizing your revenue by offering double-sided incentives. Of course, also monitor the quality of your invited users to make sure users are not just abusing your referral scheme, but actually invite the people that might benefit from the product, because otherwise you might have poor activation rates, poor retention, nobody purchasing anyways, and also decreasing the quality of your community in the product otherwise. Fix the bugs and make sure the users actually get the rewards. We had quite an issue with the privacy changes on iOS when our attribution pretty much broke. I mean, I guess it broke for everyone. But overall, we were not able to then properly attribute users coming from the referrals. So we had to fix that so that users are actually getting their rewards. And now the last part, content loops. 4 very common types can be generated by user and company and can be distributed by user and company. I personally believe that the loops that are distributed by the company can be a huge growth lever, but not necessarily for mobile apps. I might be proven wrong in the future, but all these canonical examples of how you see Pinterest growing or Airbnb or Quora through the user-generated content and search engine optimization, unless you have a website and a product on the web, which is a huge growth driver, probably it's unlikely to benefit your mobile app directly. What I believe, though, is that user-generated content that is, or company-generated content that is distributed by users can be very powerful growth loops for mobile apps. And I'm going to also share some examples of this. Maybe anyone is using content loops already for growth. A few people. Very interesting. Luke is hesitant. Nice. So the first very common type is sharing the content that is already in your app. If it's content heavy or has large product libraries, then you see pretty much on every screenshot here a sharing button in the top right corner. So this content can be easily shared with others. And I believe it works. So consider giving this possibility if your app is also very content heavy. On another side, when it comes to user-generated content or company-generated, which is powered by insights from users, you probably all have heard and already maybe even seen the new version from 2023 of Spotify's Year Wrapped. I saw yesterday that it's already there. You might have also seen Duolingo's Year in Review. They started it in 2021, and they're doing it since then, so probably going to happen in December too. So this is the content that is based on the user's stats and is very powerful to be shared and can be also a huge growth driver for you. There is no easy term to describe this loop, so the name for it is very complicated. It's a social viral acquisition loop powered by company-generated user-distributed content. Or maybe to keep it more simple, user-generated content that gets shared on social media. We can argue whether it better fits into viral loops or content loops, but I decided to put it into the content loops for now. So user installs your app, they unlock some achievements and they want to share them. They do share them on social media, and this is how other people get exposed to your brand and ideally also download and install your app. What we are doing at Mimo, because the app has a lot of gamification elements, we allow users to share their achievements as well along the way. Users can share their streaks, they can share if they're moving to a higher league, they can share the summary of their progress as well, typically on two channels like Instagram and Facebook stories, but also there is an option to share it as an image with all the friends as well. So how can you optimize a loop like this? Step one sounds very easy, but it's very hard to do. Increasing the motivation of users to share. Make sure that in your product they can achieve the performance that they're actually proud of, because it's the work of you and your product team to make sure that you lead them to success. I've heard a lot in user interviews that users might not be willing to share some of their playgrounds because they believe they're not really well done, they're very basic, so they're not very happy with the performance they're achieving so far in order to share it. So make sure that this is not happening and help them actually get there. It also makes it easier to make this loop work when the content sharing is organically embedded into the app. So you cannot just layer it on top of some feature or functionality. Ideally, users should be getting through these achievements and unlocking the content and creating it as a part of usage to make it more like a better, more organic fit. And the second step is to simplify the sharing process. Again, like I've showed in the viral flow examples, there are you can make sure that users get to sharing it within like 1 to 3 clicks. Experiment with the options that you offer to them. Can be 1 or 2, can be multiple, but still it should be a very straightforward process ideally. So now to the mistakes, the most interesting parts. Decide if you want to A/B test it or roll it out. I recommend to A/B test it, like many other things. But back then, when implementing this feature, I was fairly excited and I really wanted to see how high the adoption of the feature is going to be. That's why we just rolled it out. And you can see on the graph on the right, this is the retention curve for users from the cohort that shared 2 stories versus those who did not. And by looking at it, you might think, That's freaking awesome. I'm going to implement the content loops in my app tomorrow to improve the retention, to pretty much triple it. So that's not exactly true, because as it was not a pure A/B test, it's hard to tell whether the users are sharing their achievements to stories because they're already super motivated and because they would be your most loyal fans anyways. And maybe this is because their retention would be high regardless, or whether their retention actually gets better if they shared and committed to promoting your product on social media. I don't know yet. I believe that also these are the users that would be pretty loyal and well retained anyways. And also make sure to monitor the sample sizes, because typically the percentage of users who share to stories is lower than the ones that are not sharing. And the second advice I would give is to run a minimum viable test first. Before thinking about all the possible use cases for content loops in your app, try to nail down and to get at least one of these use cases right. Try to increase the ceiling for it, to optimize the sharing options, how the image looks like. Should it be very personalized or not really? How the process for sharing should look like, and how motivated they are before you start layering in all the other use cases, because it will, of course, help you with some of the mistakes. And I talked a lot, but as the last advice that you can already do tomorrow, what I would recommend is to, again, try to approach it strategically. First, sit down, think, and write down all of your assumptions for different loops. Which of them can work for your app? How much effort it would require to make it spin in the right direction? What would be the output? How relevant they are to your product? And what is the potential ceiling that you might hit for each of the loops? Then draft a very basic funnel with some of the conversion rates per step that need to ideally happen for the loop to work. Design and launch your minimum viable test, and then double check the math. See if there are levers that you can optimize, that you can easily fix to make the math look better. Or if there is nothing like this, maybe it's in the end not a good fit for your product. And repeat the process with relaunching, retesting, and double checking the math. That was it from my side. I was very happy to talk to you here today, and I hope it was worth your time. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Also come after the talk and tell me if you have any questions or if you're using any growth loops already. I'm constantly looking for new use cases to showcase. Yeah, thank you very much for your time.